Hello, it's Ruby, and today I am going to be talking to you about journals. Now, I keep a lot of notebooks. I filmed a video last year with a breakdown of my notebook ecosystem, and there are a lot. I'm aware that there are a lot, but quite a vast subsection of those are journals, and I'm going to be sharing 6 of my journals with you today, kind of the differences between them, why I have 6 different ones, and what I put in each of those. More broadly in this video, I also want to talk to you about why I do journal, why I like journaling. Hopefully this can provide some encouragement with your own journaling process. You might take away one tiny little thing from this video, and I don't know what that will be, but hopefully you can take away something. Before we dive into what is in each of these journals, I wanted to talk through my journaling routine. So there are 4 main times when I will journal, and journaling is also one of my very favourite things to do. Oh my gosh, it's so there's something so calming about it, and something so wonderful about fully just connecting with yourself. Like when you're journaling, you're communicating with yourself and you're letting different parts of you talk, and it's inherently so expressive, but without any ulterior motive. Like when you journal, you're not doing that for somebody else, you're doing it for yourself. You're maybe doing it to document an event for future use so that you don't forget it. It's kind of a form of archiving and preservation and record keeping, and it's also something for current you to think about something more logically. It works like a sounding board, so it's throwing it back to you, and you get a new perspective on whatever it is you're thinking about. I see the purpose of journaling kind of falling into those 2 camps, and that's going to inform how you journal. First, I love cozy desk time. This could be at any time of the day, but usually I love to do it at about 5 or 6 p.m. and it's starting to get dark outside, and you light a candle and you get a cup of tea and you sit down with your notebooks and put on some music and just sit there and kind of write whatever you want to write. In those moments, and kind of when I'm doing cozy desk time, it will be more like scrapbooky, junk journaling, writing lists, but there's no purpose for it. It's just allowing yourself to write whatever you want to write, whatever is on your mind, and it's honestly one of my favourite pastimes. It's in my top 5 things to do ever. Then number 2 is before bed. So I like to do more kind of documenting my day before bed, so jotting down key things that happened, things that I don't want to forget. That's very much the preservation side. So if somebody says something really lovely, for example, I just want to jot it down, and this is the diary that I use for that. As I say, I will go into all of these though in a little bit. Then number 3 is in the morning. That's when I like to do morning pages. I do that in this notebook, and it's just a time to get out any thoughts so that you can approach the day with a really clear head. And then the final time that I will journal is when I'm feeling stressed and when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm feeling anxious. When you're feeling stressed and when your thoughts are going at a million miles an hour, you can't keep up with them, and I find at least I can't trust what my brain is saying. I have a tendency to catastrophize quite a bit, and so if I'm just sat there sitting with my thoughts and letting them swirl round and round, I will at some point convince myself that something absolutely terrible is going to happen and that it's logical that that's going to happen. And so I have a tendency to kind of not thinking logically and maybe coming up with in my head something that I have to do in order to stop something bad from happening. And essentially when my brain goes to that place, I've learned that the most valuable thing I can do is externalize those thoughts. And so I have a 2-step routine that I will do when my brain starts to go into those horrible places, and journaling is a part of that. So I will grab this notebook and I will just write. I will write the terrible thing that I think is going to happen. And really essential here is I won't be thinking about what I'm writing. I'm just going to be writing. I'm just going to be scrolling along, talking to myself about this is what I think is going to happen and this is why I think it's going to happen. And then I will let myself, through the journal entry, offer an alternate perspective. And I usually find that through actually externalizing it and writing it down, you start to kind of look at it in a new way, because you're reading it on paper and suddenly you think, oh wait a sec, that doesn't make logical sense. I don't think that's actually going to happen. And I find it incredibly helpful to kind of get it out of my system by putting it on paper. And then the second thing I will do once those thoughts are out is to meditate. Specifically, I will do a very quick 5 to 10 minute meditation on Headspace. And honestly, you can do these anywhere as well. I've done them on the train before if I'm suddenly very, very stressed. So once like the thoughts are out, put in headphones, just allow your brain to focus on something which isn't those thoughts, because otherwise, even though they've already got out of you, I find that like if I can't calm my brain, they might just come back. There was a study quite recently where they found that 5 minutes of Headspace a day can actually reduce your stress. I would say that's the most dramatically helpful way that I use Headspace, just because it completely is able to reshift and reframe my thinking in a time where I really need it to be reshaped. But there are so many other ways you can use Headspace. So the other one that I like to do is the soundscapes for sleep, and also the sleep meditations, which you can do right before you go to sleep, because I've struggled with insomnia for years, and of course it's very difficult to get to sleep when you go to bed already stressed. But I do just love how on Headspace there are so many different meditations and features and things that you can listen to, and that these suit different types of brains. Like it's not just one kind of resource, there are so many, and then they can suit lots of different people. If you do have a tendency to get stressed and that's something you're trying to reduce in 2026, then Headspace has actually very kindly provided a link which will give you 60 free days of Headspace, just so you can try it out. Usually the free trial is only 2 weeks, but this way you get 2 months of just doing meditations and reducing your stress. It's definitely worth giving a go. But anyway, that is my journaling routine, and now I'm actually going to walk you through how I use all of my different journals. I'm actually going to start with this one because it's the one that I've had for the longest, and this is my first type of journal that I ever kept. These are some of the other ones like this that I've kept over the years, and this is for documenting daily events. I used to be much more consistent with this kind of diary keeping when I was a bit younger, so I did it every single day, like multiple pages every day from the age of 15 to 17. And the entries in this aren't messy at all. It's all written in fountain pen. I speak directly to the diary as a sort of person, if that makes sense. But this kind of is very much an archive of things that happened. So if something significant happened in my life, I would write it down, but I will write it a bit like a story. And so it's something that I can go back to and I can read, and indeed over the years I have reread my diaries quite a bit because it gives a really interesting snapshot of my life at any given point, and I'm just so glad that I kept one. This is also what people think about when someone says, oh, I keep a diary or I keep a journal. Like, it's very experience based, and you're writing about like your life and what happens in your life, and I think this is just a really wonderful one, especially to keep at a very like significant, interesting time in your life, or when you're like a teenager. And it's just, I'm so glad that I've got my teenage years documented so that I can look back on them and remember them. So then this one is actually my favourite kind of journal, so I'm going to show you this one next. But I've only started doing this in the last year, so I started this year. This is a kind of junk journal sort of thing, but it's also not a junk journal. In many ways, this has come to replace my other diary, which I don't really keep as often anymore. I don't do it every single night, for example. But this is kind of like a more decorative sort of diary. As you can see, I do still write, and I'm writing down the stories and documenting the day. But it's also decorative, and I can add photos. And I really like how, as a journal, it captures not only the story of what happened, but also gives me a visual aid. Or for example, this was torn out of the leaflet advertising the Caledonia Sleeper, and so there's also something physical from that actual day which exists here on the page, and I think there's something wonderfully connective about it. Like, I touched this piece of paper and it's actually connected to the trip itself. There's also this little train ticket which Blakeney made for me because we were together at the time, and so again, that's very special. I really love it aesthetically as well, and it's incredibly cozy to sit and make, and very satisfying. And I think because I really like the way that it looks, I look through it a lot. It's a really lovely way to be reflective, and yeah. There are also in here, I'm not going to show you this one because it's quite private, but I've got like letters that I've written to myself, documenting going to Windsor Castle, and my weekend away with Jade, Agatha Armitage letters. But there's also a November to-do list, for example, so it's not just about documenting. It could also be like a list or reflections or just anything that I'm interested in that moment. So this one, for example, I wrote down things that I love about autumn, which is journaling because I'm capturing my thoughts about something in a particular moment, and this is like a snapshot of my brain and my thoughts at this time in my life, this autumn, but it's not like event based. And I really like how as a journal this feels much more creative and it feels less tied to a particular form. Like I could kind of put anything in this. So here's another. I made like a Pinterest board style thing on this page of things I liked in 2025. I've also got New Year's resolutions here. My favourite music from the year is here, and some photos from trips. This is from my solo day in London where I went to go and see ballet shoes. This is a kind of journal, and this is like the journal that I think is trending a lot on TikTok. I follow so many journal accounts who make journal entries a little bit like this. My absolute favourite creators who make journal content are Lily and Daisy and Noah Marie. Both of them have stationery shops as well where they sell stickers and art, and they are wonderful to put in your journals. I've got stickers from both of them in my journal, and if you're interested in this kind of journaling, those are the two creators I would recommend you following. I've got into this year and I'm really excited to, I've like literally got 2 pages left of this one, so I'm going to pick up a new one tomorrow. I think a journal like this is lovely to keep because there are no rules with it, and it's about like list keeping and just like documenting things that at that moment you really like. So for example, I really loved Atonement this summer, and so I did this beautiful spread on Atonement and the cinematography of Atonement because it captures an interest I had at that time, but it's not necessarily about like these journals I think become a snapshot of your brain as opposed to just what's happening in your life. And so very fun. I can't wait to start my next one, and I think increasingly this might overtake as my main type of journal. I might start incorporating elements from my other journals into this kind of journal. The next one, this is an example. This is full now, but this is my media journal from last year where I kept a note of any paintings I liked, book reviews, film reviews, just any media that I was consuming went in here so that I could have like a snapshot of what content I enjoyed in 2025. I would like recommend keeping a journal like this, and I've got a whole video about media journals if you're interested. But I think in 2026 I'm going to be combining these 2 journals together and putting media reviews in this journal as opposed to keeping it separate. I might try that at the beginning of the year and see if I prefer them compiled, but I definitely like physically writing about and documenting the media that you consume. Again, is giving a snapshot of you in a particular moment, which I think is really cool and should be lovely to look back on when you're older. Like, it's a form of archiving again, and yeah, just like capturing a picture of your brain as it exists in this moment. The next kind of journal that I've got are my letters to my future self. I stick them in like envelopes in this notebook, as you can see, and then in each of these there is a card or a letter, and I mostly send these to myself when I go on trips, and that's because I really like the new perspective that travelling gives you. And like whenever you're away from home, even if it's just for a night or even just for the day, like if you're on a day trip somewhere, I find that it gives like a new perspective on situations and a new outlook. And so this is a place for compiling new perspectives and compiling thoughts that are mine, but also which might not be mine when I return from somewhere. Because I do think our thoughts are very much tied to our space, and I find this really interesting to look at sometimes because I'll read a letter and I'll be like, wow, that's really interesting I had that thought, because I do not think like that at the moment at all. And it's actually fascinating to see how much your brain changes between spaces. Like, since I've started doing this, I am so much more aware of that and aware of the way that we are affected by the spaces that we're in, the people that we're with, and it's very interesting. So yeah, I really like this. And I do see letters like this. I think letters to your future self are a form of journaling because you're writing to yourself. You're not writing to somebody else. And in that way, it's very similar to keeping a diary. This is another type of journal I have. It's a nature journal. Basically, this is where I will write down bits of nature writing. So if I see something really beautiful, if I'm listening to some birdsong and it sounds gorgeous, then I will write it in here. I might write an entry. I used to do this very consistently. I'm less consistent with it now. I just kind of pick it up when I want to now. But for while I was writing just one page of this every single day. It's really lovely to look back on, actually. The sky was blue yesterday, as it always was, but clouds hurried inwards as we passed Perth, furling together, merging with mist and tree and sky until the world was part white, part green, as you mostly see in photographs, the kind I assumed had been edited, exaggerated, or at the very least taken on an exceptional day. But no, this was a normal Tuesday. Neither winter nor summer, morning nor night, the ordinary, normal is anything but. It's little things like that. It's just kind of capturing a moment for myself so that I can look back on it. While I'm talking about nature journaling, actually, I did actually want to show a nature journal that I did keep very consistently. Again, because it might give an idea. Sorry, this is giving me a headache, this headband. This might give you an idea of how to keep a nature journal, or like a type of journaling to try if you want to. This was the nature journal I kept in 2023 for spring. And I actually printed this. I thought like 200 limited print copies of this on my website because lots of people were asking to see it. And I might re-release another like 50 this spring, possibly, so I will let you know if I do. The shop will be linked down below, and then you can sign up to the newsletter if you want to like get notified if I do decide to do that. But basically, I wrote a series of letters, poems. It was just every single day I had to do an entry of some kind, so like research on flowers, this is a snowdrop that I pressed, a poem, another poem, these are like journal entries about what I saw nature-wise every day, catkins, and it was such a fun exercise. It made me feel so connected to the world as it turned to spring, and I'm so glad I did this because still, like every spring since, like the 2 springs since, I've known so much more about what's happening to the plants and what's happening to the flowers, and it's made me feel like even now more connected to spring than I ever did before. Like it made me love spring because I could see all of the changes every day. But it's something that I would highly recommend you doing if you are at all interested. So I kept this from January until May, and it's honestly one of the most fun projects I've ever done. I cannot recommend it enough, and I kind of want to do one this year, maybe for summer. The other thing I haven't mentioned is I do have quite a few books of lists, and I use little notebooks like this, like the little Muji notebooks, and I like to write lists in these, and I guess list keeping could be seen as a kind of journaling when you're writing lists about like your favourite words or places you want to see or things like that, and I keep a lot of lists like that, and I've got a few notebooks which are just for lists, but I'm not going to talk about that because it feels like I would be talking forever if I talked about all of those notebooks too. I do like notebooks, if it wasn't clear. As I'm editing this, that I realise I completely forgot to mention one of the very crucial journals that I keep, which I've already spoken about in this video, but that's my Morning Pages journal. This is it. It's one of the Pumpkin Productivity notebooks, which I used to sell in my shop. This is where I just school thoughts, and so this is my messiest journal, and it doesn't have any structure. I don't really look back on these. It's more about the act of writing as opposed to an act of archiving, which is quite different from the other ones I keep. But I think having a messy notebook like this, where you don't have any expectations for yourself, where you're not worried about writing something good, where you're not worried about writing something like important, is really key, because that's the only way that you're going to really let thoughts out and use like the journal to process. So that is a very key kind of journal that I do have, and I think one of the most important in my collection of journals. Anyway, that is an insight into my notebooks. I hope that you found this interesting. Maybe there is something you can take away from this to input into your own journal ecosystem or the way that you journal. If you have follow-up questions about journaling as well, then please do say. There are some journal prompts I think are very, very useful. So if you want a video on journal prompts or on author diaries, or like my favourite notebooks to use in terms of the actual stationery, just let me know. Any questions you have, just please do say, because I do love talking about my notebooks. I am maybe a little too invested in the notebooks that I have, but I think I'm among friends when I say that. It's one thing I love about this community is like how many other people love notebooks, and I never feel judged for loving notebooks. like when I made my notebook ecosystem video, part of me was like, oh no, people are going to really judge how many notebooks I have, but there are so many other people who are talking about like how many they have and how they use them, and it's, I don't know, it's just, it's so lovely to be among people who are the same and who really understand like the joy and the wonder of notebooks, because they are fantastic things and places where we can preserve our lives. Like, how cool is that? But anyway, thank you for watching again, and I hope you have more than just a productive week.